Well, welcome this afternoon, everyone. We are glad that you have taken some time to join us today. We are going to be talking about student supports and online testing. We do have a large group today, so we would like to ask that you use our Q&A as you have questions. Today, Jenny and I will be talking to you and showing you student supports in our system. We've got some folks also in the background that might be responding to your questions as they come in. We'd like to remind you that this is being recorded. You will get a copy of this recording in about 24 hours. It will also be up on our YouTube channel so that you can reference that in the future. Our wonderful Joel has been going and updating these videos, so we have some nice clickable features so that you can hop directly to the portion of the video you need to view. So we really want to make sure we honor your time with these resources we're sharing and help you better utilize them for the purposes that you have in mind. So again, we do have a Q&A window. You are welcome to ask questions. We are a large group, so we do ask that those questions contain to our topic today. If you have specific concerns about something you are experiencing, the best way to get support there is to send an email or go to our online help area and submit a request. And that email can be sent to support@eduphoria.net. The topics that we're going to cover this afternoon are the available student support. So we will be showing you what that looks like from the student perspective, because today we really want to reach our teachers that are delivering these assessments to students and make sure that we're understanding what that looks like, how to address these different supports and how they support that assessment process. We'll zoom out a little bit and talk for a moment about TestHound import. And then we will show you our newest feature, content clarifiers. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in as a student and discuss some of these student supports that we have available. So when we are saying student supports, we are really talking about accommodations, and TEA talks about accommodations in two different categories. We talk about accessibility features as well as designated supports. So first, I'd like to talk about some accessibility features that are available for all of our students, and that would be things like our color theme, or you might think of this as a color overlay. So students have the ability to change what their screen looks like to meet their visual needs. We also have magnification through Zoom. So this is going to be standard for your students that they can zoom in or zoom out on the content that is in front of them. And then we also have a highlight tool. So as students are going through the assessment, they can highlight text and have it highlighted, and they can also clear that highlighting if they don't need that available to them. So this is part of the accessibility features that are offered to all students. The Zoom lets you go until it is as large as the screen. It's just going to be there for you, for those students to manipulate. It's not giving you a percentage as you were going through this. So the next thing we're talking about is designated supports, and some of the student supports that we offer within the software that meet that need. So one of those is text-to-speech. So this student has text-to-speech turned on, and I'm just going to demo that for just the question portion here.
Oceanic lithosphere. Melting. Asthenosphere. Which of the following land features would most likely be formed at the boundary in the diagram?
So you can see students have nice control here when they have text-to-speech. I can listen to just my item. I can listen to the individual answer choices, and I can even highlight a portion of the text and speak only that selection. As the student with text-to-speech, I also have some options to help with my interface. I can change my volume, change the speed of my speaker. I can change between a male and a female speaker. And for students that have an assessment that is composed in Spanish, they could also change their speaker to be a Spanish speaker. And so what that will help with, if there is actual number typed, it will make sure that that is spoken in Spanish and not English. The next feature that we would like to show is the calculator feature. So here we have an assessment item that would need some calculation, and the student can open their calculator. This is an object that can be moved around the screen so we can make sure they can still view the prompt for this problem, and then they can type in what they need to calculate and then type in their answer. They can also close this calculator. This is available. You can turn it on for every student that takes the assessment, but it is also a student support in cases where not everyone is allowed the calculator for that content area. So for text-to-speech for a moment, right now, resources do not have the ability to utilize the text-to-speech function. There are some workarounds that you can find in our online help guide, but at this point in time, no resources are available in the text-to-speech. You also have spelling assistance available. So what this looks like is as students are typing in their response, if they misspell an item, they're going to get the red squiggly lines underneath, and they can right click and they will have suggested replacements for that word. So in this case, I misspelled opposite and it gave me some options to replace that word. I'm seeing a question about a graphing calculator option. Right now, we are in the research phase of that becoming a future support. So right now, it is not a support, but it is something we are researching to see if we can include that in the software in the future. The next designated support that we have is content clarifiers. I'm going to be very brief here because at the end of this portion, Jenny's going to be showing us a lot more in depth what this looks like. So again, we can see on this resource that I have here, text-to-speech is not available to this student. And so here I have diagram. I can see my pop-up for a definition of diagram. And then also on my item, I have the same pop-up, but text-to-speech is available here. So I just wanted to quickly show you, this is what it looks like for the student when we don't have text-to-speech and when we do have text-to-speech, because we know some students are only going to have one of these supports turned on. For the final question, I wanted to show you what the Spanish interface looks like for students. So I'm going to refresh my assessment real quick and go to our final item. So this item is in Spanish, and I have turned on the support for Spanish for this student. So notice now my buttons for calculator, for my color overlay, for my speaker, all of these are now in Spanish. My submission button. So all of this interface is now in Spanish for this student. This question was written in Spanish. So if I navigate back to a previous question, it did not translate when I turned this on for the student. But I wanted to show you that the interface can be made viewable in Spanish for those students that are taking an assessment that has been built in Spanish as well. Do we have questions to address about any of these, Jenny?
We do. One of the comments someone made was about setting the preference under the administration options for languages. So if it's a Spanish administration, it's a Spanish test, you would want to set the language to Spanish. If it's an English administration, you would want to set it to English. So in other words, the software does not translate. If you've got questions written in English and you select Spanish as the option, it reads them in a heavy accent. It does not read them in Spanish. So that's a great thing to point out. We appreciate that. We do have a question about when a feature or future feature could be available. It was about when will text-to-speech for certain questions be able to be turned off and on. You always have the option to submit those as feature requests. On this particular webinar, we don't have information about when things would be available. This is simply a webinar to present to you what's available at this time. When you have those ideas or requests for features within the software, please submit them as feature requests to training@eduphoria.net or support@eduphoria.net. We do catalog those feature requests, and they weigh heavily in our development cycle. And so, please just keep that in mind when you're, asking about future development.
Yes. And so I'm seeing a question also about text-to-speech and the content clarifiers, which can also be called content and language supports. These can both be turned on for the student at the same time. So this student that we are looking at right now, both of these supports are turned on for them. So that's why this student, when we see diagram, we see the text-to-speech. If this was a student that did not have text-to-speech on, all of their content clarifiers would look like this one does and not have that text-to-speech bubble. So both of those can be turned on for an individual student to utilize both of those on one assessment. Any other questions before I hop into teacher view?
Yeah, there were questions about reading fractions correctly for text to speech. And so if you want it to say 2/3 instead of 2/3, the only option right now is to convert that to an image and add the alt text to the image so that it reads it the way you want it to sound. That would be your only option at this point. There could possibly be additional ways in the future for that to be done, but right now converting it to an image and adding the alt text is your option. And then we have some more kind of specific questions about how do I do this or how do I do that or how do we suggest that you do things. If you have those kind of questions that are specific to you or specific to how to do something in the software that we don't get to, we have to keep time in mind in today's webinar. And so if we don't get to those things in the webinar today, please remember you can always email support@eduphoria.net or training@eduphoria.net, and we will guide you to the appropriate help, documentation, send you a video, talk to you in person, whatever we need to do to help you through those things.
Awesome. I do see some questions coming in specific to content clarifiers. That's where we're going to end with our time today, going through explicitly how to set those up on an assessment. So have no fear, those questions will be addressed as we continue on. I am seeing one question about is the level of these content and language supports comparable to what TEA provides through STAR and the EOC. This is our first iteration of content clarifiers to meet those needs. So as you see, they function as a pop-up. So if you are familiar with some of the supporting documents that TEA has out, this is supported like a pop-up. This does not cover every single instance of a content and language support that TEA has defined, but this is just our first rollout of these features. And this does meet a lot of those needs that can be utilized. So you can have an image, you can have text, you could plug in a formula for your student to draw their attention to something from a reference document. So there's lots of different ways to utilize this. And Jenny will go into more detail on what that looks like, and that will help you brainstorm some usages here. So the next thing I would like to show you is from a teacher perspective. So we are focused on the teacher today, and I'm going to bring up that student that was just taking the assessment. So I'm in Aware, I've gone to my Students tab, I'm typing in my student's name, and then I am going to go select him from my list. And so notice here, as a teacher, I can go and view what supports are turned on for my individual students. So this would be a way just to verify what supports are available to my students. I could check the documents I have from either an LPAT, from a 504 committee, from an ARD committee, or even my RTI students. I could verify what supports are turned on at this level for an individual student. And then as a teacher, where I would go to make any adjustments to this is going to be up in my Analyze tab. And I'm going to go to Test Available. Let me go to narrow this list down to my teacher test. So the assessment that I just had Colin take is here. I have it available in my online test proctoring. And so we know that as the teacher, you are the person most qualified to make certain decisions and conclusions on student performance. And so we wanted to make sure that teachers always had a way to offer these supports to students. So for an individual assessment, a teacher can go in and make adjustments. So maybe you have a student that has had an ARD for several years, and maybe we're considering removing some supports, and we want to test in the classroom first to see, is the student still successful with the removal of this accommodation? And so you have the opportunity to either turn off or turn on individual supports. And again, when the teacher is making that change, it only applies to the single assessment where that change was made. So it is not saving that default. Okay, so we will talk about a new way in just a moment to get these defaults into the system that will be coming soon. Before I do that, is there anything else we need to discuss here, Jenny?
No, there's not. And we've already had a question about how to get supports or the template to upload supports. So we'll show both what's coming as far as TestHound is concerned, and then also how you can currently do that without TestHound. So we'll show both of those here shortly. And then also adding alt text, I'll demo here in a second. So I just didn't want you to think y'all were being ignored.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay. So anytime that you are in the software, if you are needing assistance, need some online help documentation, you can go to Eddie Helps and you can click additional help resources. Where that is going to take you is to this site, and you will end up on this landing page. For information that we're talking about today, you would go into Aware. I navigated from our help area to Aware. And then I scrolled down to student supports for online testing. There are very specific articles that will go into detail on the different student supports that we demoed today, as well as the content clarifiers that Jenny will be demoing for us in just a moment. And then as well as something we have coming very soon is the ability to upload student supports from TestHound. So in this article, we'll walk you through the steps that are necessary for doing that. In TestHound, there's going to be a nice download for you that's very clearly labeled. And I just wanted to show you at the bottom here, these are the supports that will pull in. So when we were just on the student screen for that teacher, these are the supports that we saw. And then I've got it here, nice and larger print for you guys. These are the supports that can be pulled in from TestHound. We've worked with them very closely to make sure that both interfaces, theirs and ours, understand what this looks like. So as you're doing that TestHound import, these are the 5 student supports that you will be able to pull over from that system into Eduphoria. And they will divide out between English, writing, math, science, and social studies. So those are going to be the areas that you are able to pull in from TestHound.
Great. Okay, so student, we'll get back to content clarifiers here in a second, but where you can currently manage student supports is under, or embedded supports is under the students tab. If you scroll down here to the bottom and you say upload student support status, you can choose a file. If you click where it says click here, it takes you to a help article that provides the instructions on how to do it and a file layout that's here. So if you're not a customer of TestHound and you won't be using their export to import, you would use that file that's available there in that help article. So again, if you click here, it takes you to the article that has that file. The other way, of course, a teacher can change it for the individual assessment, but the other way to change the default is to use the student's profile under the students tab. So if you go to a specific student's profile, an administrator or someone who has that level of access can change the default for the student here. And so I would say that file upload might need to take place a couple or 3 times a year, 4 times a year, a couple of times a semester. But if you've just had an ARD, right, and you're changing it for 1 student, or you've had 5 ARDs this week and you're changing it for 5 students, this may be the simplest way to do that is through this, on the student profile, you're just setting the defaults there. So those are really the 2 ways to manage the default status. All right, so we have content clarifiers to show, which are super exciting. There we go.
Before you get there, folks, like always, like Jenny said earlier about releases, we don't. Those of you that are asking of a time frame or a date for the TestHound upload, we don't have that. Nobody from our company would have that. It's in development and in Q&A right now. So obviously we'll announce that when it becomes available, and any other additional information needed with help documents and all those things would be part of that.
Right, perfect, thank you. So content clarifiers will be coming your way soon. You'll see them shortly. One of the things that you'll notice right off is you're going to have an additional tab up here. So in the past, all of the online administration options were buried under the administration tab, and now we've moved that to a separate tab that's specific to online configurations. And so that will be the biggest clue that this has happened, is that you now have an additional tab here. And so the way that will happen, I do not have to be under the edit button here. I can just simply have that open, and I can highlight a word and say add new clarifier. And from there, I can type text, or I could copy and paste, or I can add an image from that or depicting that word, so that it provides clarification to the student about what that word means. It's pretty neat. It works really, really well, seamless. It's as well as I think it could be expected to work. I can't imagine it being any smoother. If I want to provide the same clarifier to multiple words, I can highlight the word again and say add a new clarifier or add an existing clarifier. And so if I'm going to add an existing clarifier, I simply choose the clarifier I want to add and hit add clarifier. And the reason why the system doesn't choose the word wagon and apply the clarifier to every instant that the word wagon is used is that the content or language support should be specific to the context of the paragraph or the question that it's embedded in. And so the word model was used an example earlier this week. There was a resource and several questions, and the word model was used in there several times, and it was used with different meanings. And so that's why the clarifiers, again, should be applied where appropriate and not just a blanket application for every time a word is used. So I can, again, provide an image. I could also provide that's my next word. I could actually provide a definition, and I can select multiple words. So I can select this whole passage right here and say, add a new clarifier, and choose an image. There we go. So that's on, multiple words. It gives the reader an idea of what a highway is in case we were concerned about that. I can also, again, provide text as a content clarifier. So any image, any image that, or any clarification that you think the student might benefit from can be used here. And so again, add new clarifier, and we're going to say to create or devise. Okay, there we go. So under this online tab here, I now have the options to view the clarifiers that are on this test. And in the case of wagon, it was used twice. So I can see it where the clarification was provided in the resource. And I can also see that clarification was provided for question number 4. And so again, you'll get to see every time that clarifier has been used. Let me edit that one. There we go. Perfect. What it looks like from a student perspective can be viewed in the preview online testing option. And so I can see here that the student will know that there has been a clarifier provided because you have that blue dotted line underneath. And so if they hover over, it shows the image or, again, the definition that you've provided. So there we go. If we are, if we have text to speech turned on, of course, this was provided in a resource, so text to speech would not be available for this one. But let's say that we had provided one for selection over here in the question, text to speech would be available as, that could be read to them. That clarifier could be read to them if needed. If it's provided, again, in the context of a question, not in a resource. So because resources aren't eligible for text to speech. So do we have any questions we need to address?
We have one question about, is there a way to create a bank of content clarifiers to use over multiple assessments?
Not at this time, no. And again, part of the reason for that is the clarifiers themselves should be specific to the content or the context of the question or reading passage that they're part of. So that is why. Anything else?
File types for images and content clarifiers. I know that in our online help guide, there is some general guidance on a recommended size. But I believe for file type, it's your JPEG, your PNG.
Right. And I'm going to just give a little plug for this because I found it today and I think it's kind of an amazing resource. Region 13 has a resource available that shows you good examples of content clarifiers. Terra, do you have that page open? I know open, I closed mine.
No, I don't, but I can get it open for the very end.
Okay, perfect. And so Terra will show you what that looks like or give that address here in a second. It's a great resource that kind of guides you on how content clarifiers can be used as an embed or language clarifications can be used as a embedded support for online testing. All right, any more questions?
We have a question about, so teachers can add clarifiers prior to sharing with admin that create CBAs. Can you talk a little bit about if we're sharing the assessment, what happens to those content clarifiers?
Yeah, so when you share an assessment, the content clarifiers are shared just like they would be part of as an assessment, as long as it's a share and not a, send to. And so, yes, you can share, you can create clarifiers and share, or a teacher can create the test and then the test can be shared with an administrator that could be shared back as a copy. And so they would need to use the copy, of course, where the clarifiers had been created.
Yes. And for the text-to-speech within a content clarifier, the text-to-speech is only going to apply to the actual text that you have typed or copied and pasted in. It will not read an image. So in an assessment, we can do the alternative text, but within the content clarifier, the image is just to provide a visual to the student, and it wouldn't be something that would be read.
Absolutely. And I can show how text-to-speech would work. I'm sorry, I didn't demo it earlier. So if I highlighted dictionary and we created a clarifier for it, whoops, sorry, I add an existing. If we create a clarifier for this, all right, then text-to-speech, again, would read that clarifier. Question number 7. Yeah, here we go. And so again, right here.
Type text here.
There we go. So text-to-speech does work within the context of a question, just not as a resource. The other thing I wanted to show you, because we had a question about it earlier, was adding alt text to an image. And Jason kind of briefly answered it. He said, right click on it and add the alt text. So you do have to have the edit option open when you do that. And again, you can right click or double click on it and you can add alt text in this box. So I could actually type this definition out. So a little pro tip on that is to add your punctuation and spaces the way you want it to sound. So you could say 1 space, and it would give it a pause, something that seems beyond what is normal, space, 2, give it those spaces to tell it, because it reads it just the way you type it. And if you don't provide adequate punctuation or spacing, it will just read it all as one big long sentence kind of rapidly. And so again, use the punctuation appropriately to make it, read the way you want it to sound. And again, you could preview that just to double check it before you administer the assessment, which we always recommend doing. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes. Can you show them what is now on the administration tab?
Yes, I can. So right here under the administration, we still have students in collection. So these are the things that you've always seen when you go in to administer a test. So it's what students are you assigning this test to, and how are you collecting the data? So for right now, you just have under here the print options, if that's what you're doing, and then enabling, third-party testing or response pads if that's what you're doing, and what answers teachers can add to the assessment. And so again, these options have not changed at all. The only thing that changed is we moved all of these online configuration options from this collection tab right here to its own tab. And we did that for two reasons. One is we think it's cleaner to have them in their own place. They're numerous and options now. So when we started out, it was just teachers or admin, right? And now we have, calculators and the response report and randomization and lockdown browser and language and all of those things. And so it's a little cleaner if it's under its own tab, but then also this gives us the option to collect these content clarifiers here and list those out for you. And so again, administration is just students in collection. So it's very much like it was prior to the release of all of the new things for online testing. Any more questions?
The only other question we have is related to Region 10, including content clarifiers for the STAR released items. At this point in time, I don't know that that is something that we're directly working on. But it is something that we can provide further clarification for in the future.
Perfect.
Okay. We have a question now wanting to know a little bit more information about the data associated with content clarifiers.
Okay, perfect. And so, Terra, I know you had a sample test that you had scored with content clarifiers. Do you want to guide me to that?
Yes, it's in unit assessments or unit checks.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. The only one. Nice. Yeah. There we go. And so, yes, you can analyze based on content clarifiers offered. Now, that said, it doesn't mean the student used them. It doesn't capture that, but it does capture the fact that they were offered that embedded support. And so if I go here under the columns tab and I go to the local online supports, I can, drag these over and it will indicate whether or not this was offered to a particular student. You could also say, I want to filter to only kids who had, text to speech, that kind of thing. And so you can simply view a yes or no, or you could use those as filters to view, the results for students who had versus didn't have. And so I think this is really great information to gather for sure. It really helps us in our comparison of what was the performance with versus without. So is this embedded support or is this accommodation actually benefiting the student? Or, is it something that they have because they've always had it and they don't necessarily need it anymore? Or if I have a student that I want to sample that, like, would they benefit from text to speech? Would text to speech help them perform better on a test? I can certainly test that out. So yes, so data with the embedded supports is really nice. Okay, any more questions?
We had a question just kind of going back over the ability to change between English and Spanish on text to speech. So really when you're switching to Spanish, this is so that you have a native Spanish speaker, and it's going to be relevant to if the test is actually built in Spanish. So I think the question was specifically about it's written in Spanish, and you can change the speaker to a native Spanish speaker.
Right. Yeah, so on this assessment down here, you have really three options. I would recommend that if the assessment is written in English, that you go ahead and specify that this is an English language only assessment. Or if it's written in Spanish, that you go ahead and specify Spanish language only. You can always leave the option for the student to choose the language spoken. However, I'll repeat it again, it doesn't translate English to Spanish or Spanish to English. It simply reads it in the language that it was written with an accent if you choose the opposite language. So there we go.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hey, everybody, this is Jason. I just wanted to take a second here. And we're happy to show this stuff to you, and I hope you guys are liking it. I definitely want to take a chance from our company, from our team, to celebrate Emily, our leader of the product team and this assessment side and obviously all of our developers that worked on this content clarifier stuff. I can be honest, the first time we embarked on getting content clarifiers done, it seemed like an overwhelming task to be able to make something that would work right and be easy to use. How would it show up? And we think, our team thinks, and I hope y'all think the same way, that this is a very, I think elegant's a good word, a very elegant solution for how to get this done in place, being able to highlight on a word. I know that there's been many ideas that have been shared about things that can grow from it or improve from it. And trust us, we understand, and we hear you. And like we always do, especially our team is very much a customer centric team, but definitely want to celebrate our developers and that team for getting this done and making it available, because it's really something that's not as easy as it seems.
And just to show that data, like Jenny was talking about, just one more time, there is a field under columns for content clarifier usage, so we can see how many of the clarifiers on that assessment were actually utilized by the student. So we can see which students had content clarifiers on. And in this case, there were 5 on this assessment. Some of my students used all 5. While this student only used 2 of those. So this is just really great for you to take to those committee meetings, or if you have a parent contact you implying that their student shared that they didn't receive the support, you can say they did receive it and they did use it. Let's have a conversation about this. So this can be a really helpful tool for you in those conversations. So hopefully that shows you all the ways that you can pull in those data pieces right now. So I shared in our Q&A the Region 13 site that Jenny was referencing. So we've just barely started dipping our toes in this, but this is going to be a great resource, especially for teachers to understand some different ways accommodations can be utilized. You can search through accommodations. It's going to give you examples. So if we explore these accommodations, we can go and see actual accommodations per their TEA definitions, and we can start to look at what that means. And we have examples here. So I'm going to go find content and language supports real quick. And so again, those content and language supports could be coming from your LPAC, your 504, your ARD facilitator. And here you can see some nice overviews of what this could look like. So here is one saying grade specific reference material. So in this case, they provided that formula the student would use on this particular problem. And so there's just some nice information here for you to use to either figure out how to implement these different things, give you examples of how you could utilize content clarifiers, and that sort of thing. So we hope this can be a helpful tool for you guys just to go a little deeper with how you can utilize, and also provide some resources to your teachers on, okay, my student has this accommodation, now what? How can I support them in the classroom? And so we wanted to make sure to share this resource because we think it's designed really well. You can navigate through it pretty simplistically, and it provides you a lot of detailed information. So it looks like acentral.education/accommodations.
Okay, perfect. And it's, again, this is something that's produced by Region 13's curriculum department. So super nice.
And I was going to add too, I'll include that link in the link to the help articles you all showed in the email, the follow-up email that everyone will receive
Perfect.
Tomorrow.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
Yes, we appreciate you handling those details for us. Always nice.
Yes.
Okay, so just to share with you guys some things that are up and coming. And again, if you have any questions that are still lingering in your brain, the Q&A is still open for you. Next week, we will also have a lunch and learn. So we are trying to grow our practices with our webinars and getting information to you guys in a timely manner. So we will have a lunch and learn over completing electronic signatures in Strive documents. And then in February, we are going to have another Wednesday webinar for Strive conferences. So this is going to be a nice new update, getting some information out to you guys on some great product releases. So these are things that are up and coming for you to look forward to. We hope to see you back at one or more of these events. And that wraps us up today. Any closing remarks from anyone else?
Oh, thank you guys for attending. We really appreciate you dedicating your time to this.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.